No.
Hey, Mike. Okay. I just talked to Mike. He said he's ready.
I'd like to call to order the Chaska Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 13th, 2020. I'd like to read a statement before we Welcome everyone. As you can probably tell, this meeting looks a little different than normal. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're holding our meeting via video teleconference. Because the City Council has declared a local emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, state statutes allow us to hold our City Council and Commission meetings remotely. While we aren't meeting in person, we want to make sure the public can participate in our meetings. If you've joined the Zoom meeting, you will notice that you cannot unmute yourself. We have a moderator who will unmute those who wish to speak during the public comment portion of the meeting. As is typically the case, public comments will be reserved for visitor presentations or public hearings. A public hearing is on the agenda tonight, so public comments will be allowed during visitor presentations and the public hearing. Once we reach those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on the raise icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name or phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the Commission and is meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the City of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, indecent, or off-topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. Those of you watching us online or on Comcast Channel 15, please be aware of the following. Some of our Commission members, city staff, and presenters are participating in the meeting remotely. There is a delay between the live meeting to the online and cable broadcast. All actions will be taken by roll call vote. We're working hard to make sure that your voice can be heard while protecting everyone's health and safety. We thank you for your patience and constructive feedback as we work through this unprecedented situation. All right. That being said, Liz, would you do the roll call, please?
I can, yes. Commissioner Brass?
Here.
Ross?
Here.
Lacey?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Seiler?
Here.
Bobie?
Here.
Urbanski?
Here.
And Chairperson Dahlke.
Here. Thank you, Liz. Item 3 on the agenda is to adopt tonight's agenda. 3A, the May 13th, 2020 Planning Commission agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yeah, Commissioner Seiler will make a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's Planning Commission meeting.
And second?
Second, Commissioner Bobby.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I screwed up already on the first time. We have to do a roll call vote for everything. So that's where I'm going to give it over to Liz, and she'll do a roll call whenever we need to vote on something.
So this is in favor.
Yep, so when I call out your name, say yay or nay. Brass,
Yay.
Cross,
Yay.
Lacy,
Yay.
Olson,
Yay.
Riley,
Yay.
Seiler,
Yay.
Bobby,
Yay.
Urbanski, and Chairperson Dolkey.
Yay.
I'm showing 9-0.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is the visitor presentation. Is there anybody that has anything that they'd like to talk about that's not on the agenda for tonight? I'll wait a little longer than I normally do because of our delay. But even with that, I don't hear anything. So
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Very good. Thank you. We'll move on. Number 5, we're going to approve the previous meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve the April 8th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Lacy, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for April 8th.
Thank you.
Brass, I'll second the motion.
And thank you as well. Liz, vote please.
Brass,
Yay.
Cross,
Yay.
Lacy,
Yay.
Olson,
Yay.
Riley, Seiler,
Yay.
Bobby,
Here. Yay.
Urbanski, and Chairperson Dolkey.
Yay.
I'm showing 9-0.
Thank you very much. Next is the consent agenda. We're going to 6A, recommend approval of the final plat for Harvest West, 2nd edition, Tradition Development, PC number 2020-10. Can I get a motion to adopt the consent item?
I'll make a motion to adopt. It's Brass, I'll second.
Okay, Olson and second by Brass. Liz, please proceed with the vote.
Brass,
Yay.
Cross,
Yay.
Lacy,
Yay.
Olson,
Yay.
Riley, Seiler,
Yay.
Bobby,
Yay.
Urbanski, and Chairperson Dolkey.
Yay.
I'm showing 9-0.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, we're down to number 7, the action items for tonight. 7A is a public hearing. Recommend approval of the preliminary site and building plan and preliminary plat for Structures, Inc., Andersen Development, PC number 2020-11. Liz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson Dolkey and members of the Planning Commission. I'm gonna share my screen here so that we can all see the presentation. All right, can people give me a thumbs up that they can see it before I get started?
You're good.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a preliminary site building plan and preliminary plat request tonight for Structures Incorporated. So to give you an idea of where the site is located, I've included an aerial exhibit on this first slide here, highlighted in blue. So it is a vacant lot within the city of Chaska. It's mainly on the southeastern portion of the city, and it is bounded by Old Audubon Road on its eastern edge, and then we have Reveau Road on its western edge. There's additional industrial properties to the north here, so it is a continuation of kind of that industrial park. And then we also have residential to the south, specifically East Three Carriage Homes. As you can see, the lot is vacant right now. It was currently used as an agricultural field. And I've also included a couple photographs if we need a reference back, just to get a feel for the overall area. But in terms of a background from where this site started up to this point that we're at now, it was in June of 1997 that the East Creek Carriage Homes were approved. And during that time, they did plat an outlot to the north of them, known as Outlot A, that was going to be guided for future industrial north of the transmission line that's on site there. So Outlot A is basically the site that we're looking at tonight for industrial. And then in terms of the background of the company who's proposing this proposal tonight, Structures Incorporated, they are a local company that are based out of Shakopee, Minnesota. They specialize in big block wall and paver stone contracting. They are looking at a newer and larger site, specifically in Chaska, that would house their main corporate headquarters and additional shop and exterior storage space for their company. Currently, they operate with about 18 to 20 office employees and 2 shop employees. This new facility would help with that. So it was in December of 2018 that they got a concept plan approved for the site. And then it was in April of 2019, so about a year ago from now, that their first preliminary site and building plan, preliminary plat, and rezoning was approved for the site. So the site has been rezoned and was looked at for an initial preliminary site building plan and pre-plat in 2019. But since that time, they have been working on the site and doing additional studies. So they did do a soil study after their preliminary approval, and it came back with conclusions that there are poor soils on the site, specifically on the eastern side of the site. So with that, they basically had to re-look at the site in terms of how their site plan worked on there. So because of the eastern side being encompassed with poor soils, they did have to look at reorienting the building and site altogether. So tonight we're going to see basically an updated preliminary site and building plan due to poor soil study kind of dictating where they're putting the building. So with that, they are relocating the building to more of the west side of the site. And then this storage yard is situated within more of the center and easterly side of the site. So going back to previous approvals, they've essentially flipped their site plan to avoid the poor soil areas in the eastern side. Doing this does help them tremendously with the costs that come with building on poor soils. So again, they wanted to move the building as far away from the east side as possible so it wouldn't create larger costs in terms of the types of foundations and corrections that they would have to make on the site. And also, one of the bigger changes was they downsized their overall building, approximately 3,500 square feet, to again minimize their impact on the poor soils area. Here is an existing conditions plan, just to give you an idea of some of the pieces that are going on with the site. So the site itself is roughly 5 acres in size. As I stated before, it was mainly used as an agricultural site, so people did farm on the site. There is a holding pond on the south side, basically under the transmission line. As you can see on this exhibit here, there is a 125-foot wide transmission line easement that dissects the site. So there's large standing transmission lines that run through the property today. So this area is basically encumbered by that large easement. As I've stated before, there's double street frontage for this lot on Old Audubon Road to the east and then Riveau Road to the west. And then access is available from Arbor Drive, which is a private drive that accesses off of Old Audubon Road and provides additional access to the industrial properties to the north, as well as this property to the south. So I wanted to go back to what was reviewed during the concept plan and even their first preliminary plan. When it came through, there was some comments brought up during that time worth noting. In their concept plan, they did show access onto Riveau Road and an additional access onto Old Audubon Road. And since that time, they have revised those accesses so they no longer have the access on Riveau Road, and the one that was on Old Audubon Road is moved to the shared driveway access off of Arbor Drive. So the applicant did listen to staff's comments related to those access points and is reflected in the site plan this evening. Another big comment brought up was how the exterior storage yard was going to be screened. So a detail of the storage yard was provided during their initial preliminary plan and has carried through with this amended preliminary plan, basically showing what they're planning to store outside. These materials will not be more than 6 feet in height in terms of being stored outside. It'll be more raw material, pavers, gravel, and that sort of thing. In addition to that, they will also be storing their company trucks out there, and these are at 8 feet tall in height. They are showing an 8-foot tall privacy fence to run along the edge of the storage yard, so the fence will be flush or taller with the materials and equipment stored in the rear yard. So the purpose is really to screen everything that's back there. And then additionally, there were comments about landscaping to be provided around the storage yard, and then whether or not there was potential for berming as well. So you'll see in a later landscape plan that I'll share where they've added a healthy amount of screening or landscaping throughout the site. And then lastly, there was also comments brought up about noise and the type of noise generation coming from this operation. The applicant was able to provide a noise summary both now and in a previous submittal. And basically they are a Monday through Friday operation. They work from 7 a.m. up until 6 p.m. From the time frames of 7 and 9 a.m., their pickup trucks will load any exterior material that they need to bring to off-site jobs. And then if the job is done, then they would be returning back around 3 to 6 p.m. But most of the time, these vehicles that are coming in and out will remain on their job sites until the work is finished. So the frequency or the amount of trucks going in and out is not as much as a typical industrial yard. They will still be operating a bobcat and forklift in the rear or in the storage yard during the day just to move around material and fill in material. but all of the maintenance and to their vehicles and equipment will occur inside the building's shop space. So getting back to what's being requested this evening, it's specifically for a preliminary site and building plan and preliminary plat, which would encompass the construction of a new industrial office building and the construction of an exterior storage yard attached with that. So again, we're coming back to the preliminary site and building plan and plat approval because they have made changes to their layout. So instead of them moving on to final, we needed them to come back through preliminary to show the changes that have occurred on the site. So there will still be one more stage in the process for them for approvals. They'll have to come back for final site and building plan and final plat for the site. This exhibit I have up here is one of their site plans. I'm going to use my cursor to kind of orient you around, but they're showing one access into the site, which is going to come off of that shared driveway on Arbor Drive. So they'll show basically a widening of that driveway and an access point closer near to where their exterior storage yard is proposed. As you can see, the building is now oriented more so on the western side of the site, and then we have the exterior storage yard on kind of the central easterly side of the site attached to the building. They also have an employee parking lot towards the front, towards Riverview Road, which will provide access to the front of the building for people who are working at the site. As I noted before, the exterior storage yard is going to be screened off by an 8-foot fence, and then they will also be doing landscaping as well, which I'll show in a later slide. Here's another site plan. This one kind of shows kind of the detailing of the storage yard itself. The size of the building is roughly 11,500 square feet. 8,500 of that will be for office space, and then 3,000 of that will be for warehouse and shop space. Let's see here. Already mentioned a couple things about the exterior storage yard. So they'll be storing rock and other base material that they use on their job sites back there. These will be kind of sanctioned off in bins that you can kind of see listed out here or delineated here. And these will not be stacked higher than 6 feet in height. And then they also show kind of where some of their trucks and equipment will be, and those won't be higher than 8 feet in height. They are also showing pavement within this area, which was another comment brought up by staff during the preliminary, is that the exterior storage yard does have to be paved per ordinance. In terms of parking, so they are showing 69 spaces on site. 20 are for initial construction and what would be able to serve the employee base of the building. And then they're showing 49 parking spaces as proof of parking. So basically, spaces delineated within the storage yard. Again, we don't want any site to overpark their site. We only want parking stalls to be added in the future if they're needed for the demand of their business. But at the beginning stages of things, we only want them to install what is necessary for their business. So the applicant has stated to us that 20 parking stalls will be more than enough to provide ample parking space for their employees and anyone else who might be coming in and out of the office. There's also a shared agreement over the driveway, shared driveway into the site. And from last time, they already did start discussion with the other property owners to make sure that that agreement gets updated through this process. So they are currently working on getting that updated. They've also included a couple pictures from their site in Shakopee, in Shakopee, of their exterior storage yard, just to give you some type of visual of equipment and bins that they have outside on site. And then if we need a reference back to this, it might be helpful since this is kind of an overlay of the site plan on an aerial here. And then in addition, they've provided a couple section drawings just to give us kind of more of a understanding of the height relations to adjacent areas. So the first one on top is basically, let's see here, an east to west section cut. So you can see the building here, the parking lot here, and then Rago Road there with some added plantings within that. Just to give you an idea of kind of a mature look of the plantings and how the site's gonna kind of be relative to its surroundings. And then the other site section that they've provided is the north to south section cut, which gives you an understanding of kind of the exterior storage yard, fencing, and then ponding and residential to the south there. And then here's the landscape plan. So they are proposing a healthy amount of trees around the fencing area just to add a little bit more buffering and softer edge to the privacy fence that they're proposing from the residential neighbors to the south. They're also proposing a healthy amount of shrubs around the building and then a layer of trees along the parking lot side of things. I think our only comment was making sure to address the southern area as it faces south for additional height in coniferous trees potentially here to help address any headlight glare going to the south there. And then making sure to orient these boulevard trees in the actual boulevard as well. Otherwise, they've done a great job of providing a very healthy landscape plan, and we're satisfied with that. Lastly, or one of the last drawings I have here is their proposed lighting plan. Just to give you an idea of kind of the light pollution from the building and site. So they are only proposing building lighting, so they're not doing any pole lighting in the parking lot due to its very small size. So they'll have flush and mount canister lights in basically the canopy of the building, around the building, and then they'll have bollards as well along the walkway into the building, and 2 lights on the building on the west side. So you can kind of get an idea here in this exhibit just what the lighting plan calls for. They meet our ordinance in terms of foot candles and the type of fixtures that are proposed, so we didn't see any issues with their overall lighting plan. And then wanted to show a couple renderings of the building that they're proposing. From last time, there isn't much of a change. They're keeping the same materials from their previous preliminary submittal. So they'll be doing a mix of brick, architectural metal cladding, and cedar boards as an accent material. And that was very intentional between the cedar boards and the cedar fencing that they're proposing for the exterior storage yard to provide more of a cohesive look between the 2 pieces there. In terms of our building design and materials ordinance, they meet our requirement there, and in terms of the overall look of the building, we feel that they've done a great job to provide variety and articulation within the building itself. I think we had one comment on kind of the western side here, just to see if there's ability to kind of bring forth some of the material balance that you see on the other elevations onto this side as well. But we can kind of leave that up for discussion at the Planning Commission level if that deems appropriate. Just a couple pieces on the architectural side of things. So the height of this building is about 14 feet in height, oriented towards Riveau Road. Sorry, it says Old Audubon Road, but it should say Riveau Road. And then 23 feet at its highest point on the shop side of things. You know, their whole intention with the design of the building was to make it more residential compatible in terms of the look with the brick and the wood, to make it more of a seamless look out there. And then here's a floor plan of the space. We need to refer back to it. So that concludes my presentation. So we are asking you to make a motion tonight that would recommend approval of the preliminary site and building plan and preliminary plat for structures incorporated. And then based on the conditions that are listed within the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions for the commission members at this time. So please let me know if you have any. Otherwise, I know the applicants are also in attendance tonight, so if you have specific questions for them, we can get them on the microphone.
Sure, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, any commissioners have any questions for Liz before we open up the public hearing?
Liz, can you stop sharing your screen for a second so we can see everybody
Sure.
clearly? Thanks. Perfect.
I had a few questions, if I could.
Yep.
Commissioner O'Reilly. You know, just on the top of the building, it looked like there was 3 rectangles. Are those air conditioning units? You're looking at the architectural plan?
Sure. Yeah, I believe they are, but I'll have the applicant confirm on what those pieces actually are.
Would those typically be screened if they are air conditioning units? They wouldn't
Yes.
be visible from the...
Right, they would
On
have
the
to have
street.
some type of screening component from it, sometimes how far set back from the edge of the building does screen it enough, but those are things that we look at in pretty heavy detail during the building permit process to make sure that they are screened either from view or from enclosure of some sort.
Okay. The other thing that struck me was just the sense of scale between the shop facility and the office facility. Does the landscape plan reflect that sense of scale, that you have larger, say, species or plants that will grow higher in proximity to the shop rather than the office, so that it's proportional? Is that something that will be considered?
I mean, you can certainly provide it as a comment. I would say that the level of species that are proposed around the storage yard are going to provide a nice, mature delineation there around the edge. But if you have concerns with openness or something like that, you can certainly make that comment.
Okay. The other thing that struck me, and I'm no architect, so forgive me, but I just look at the architecture of the building relative to the adjacent neighborhood, and it seems pretty stark. That if in fact they are trying to blend between an industrial and residential property, just my personal opinion that doesn't meet it. So, but here again, I'm not an architect. So that's not a question. That's more of a comment.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Riley. Anyone else?
Susan?
I would, as Susan Cross, like to comment. I think the plainness and so forth that you refer to as starkness is actually a good, because of the condition of the industrial buildings to the north. This is a nice, tidy cleanup compared to the loading dock and so forth, which the residential people can see now if they want to. And that's just my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, 7:36, we'll open up the public hearing. The applicant is with us. So I guess anyone from the public that's in the meeting would like to ask any questions, make any comments?
They want to raise their hand. So we-
Remember to raise your hand. If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. If you are on the phone, is there anybody on the phone?
Does not,
Yeah, I think we see Kelly Jo here.
okay.
Oh,
Would like to speak, so. Kelly Jo, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My father and I were actually the neighbors that live right next door, so literally sharing that pond. So of course we're going to have a couple questions. Is there going to be any sort of sound dampening for the HVAC machines, exhaust, air conditioners, that sort of thing?
I will have the applicant ask that or answer that if they're proposing any additional noise mitigation methods on those pieces.
all right, thank you, Liz. Applicant, would you please introduce yourself, name and address so that everybody that maybe can't see you knows who you are?
And Liz, if you want to help me, I can unmute them if you know who that might be.
Yeah, it's Jeremy Bacon. I think his name is kind of cut off.
Oh,
And
He appears to be unmuted.
yeah, it looks like, and then I think Chad Johnson as well.
Jeremy and Chad, you're unmuted.
Hello, Jeremy?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
So, as far as screening as it would relate to the air conditioning units, it's just the screening that's on the top of the building around the units, and keeping in mind that we're upwards of 200, 250 feet away from the townhomes.
We got the HVAC guy here, who of course needs to make a comment.
Are there going to be exhaust fans and things running in your shop during the evening hours when people are trying to sleep?
No.
Okay, great.
And then our second question is, I know that with the paving, there will be, and then obviously foliage and that sort of thing will help, but what is the prediction on how this will affect the pond and the watershed there?
Liz, we've reported, we've sent in, I don't know, a couple hundred pages as far as this pond's concerned. I mean, the city's mandating that we have to oversize this and make it larger. And we've, like I said, there's got to be 150, 200 pages of reports sent in as far as water calculations and all the water that's coming from properties not on our property that we are being mandated to control. So.
We're not done.
So with the hard, originally we were talking about not having a hard surface area for your yard. So going with the hard surface area of the yard, we're assured that the pond will handle all that excess water. At the time, I remember you guys didn't even want to put a hard surface in for your yard.
So at the current time, we still don't want to put a hard surface in.
Okay.
One of our points to bring up with the commission is that we don't want to asphalt the yard space. However, the calculations have been done and the pond is being oversized.
Okay.
To account for additional hard cover.
Great.
That's all we had finally.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, I believe I don't see anyone else, so we will close the public hearing at 7:40 and bring it back to the Planning Commission for questions and comments for the applicant. We're a pretty quiet group today.
This is just a comment. You know, I like that there's only one entrance off of Old Audubon. I think that'll help control traffic in those neighborhoods. And I like having the building pushed up closer to the other industrial buildings. It certainly will provide a greater buffer between this new building and the residential homes that are there. So that's the only comment I had, and I think it's a nice plan, and I appreciate all of the landscaping that's being provided.
I make a comment too that basically agrees with Misty that they have a very difficult site to work with. Lousy soils are lousy soils, and I'm glad there's going to be something in there and that actually the pond will improve.
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. I agree with both of you. This is long overdue that we do something with this site, and I personally I like what I've seen. I like the changes that were made. They've settled or answered our questions, and I assume that before we get anywhere with the final, that the pavement question will be resolved to meet our specifications as the city of Chaska. Anyone else?
Can I speak or?
Absolutely.
So, before you guys go any further, I don't know if this is the proper time or not, but the Planning Commission had a series of, I think it was 21 action requests, and we wanted to raise some concerns we had with just a couple of them from a ownership / construction group. The first one being number 6, which was Planning Commission wanted provision to provide more articulation similar to the south facade on the west. From an architectural standpoint, we would like to leave the building and the facades as we currently have them. Second.
Or go ahead before we leave number 6. Liz, can you bring up the west facade so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Yeah. And I can try to bring up a couple, let's see here. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so then on the west, so it's on the architectural supporting dock, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I can bring up an elevation drawing too, if that helps.
Yeah, the west material elevation, I think it's like EX6 on the supporting docks. If I'm looking at this right.
Let me get to it and I'll bring it up here.
There isn't anything to the west of it, right?
Could you zoom in on that elevation, Liz, please? Thank you.
Thanks for your feedback. I can only see what's on my screen. I can't see what's on
Yeah,
everyone
so
else's
that's-
screen, so
That's very helpful.
there you go.
Perfect. Commissioner Brass, did you have some comments, or were you just helping us find it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was looking at it, I see it. I guess my opinion would be I'm not opposed for this point. We'll have to see what the rest of the applicants' points are, but in general, the building itself, I didn't comment earlier, but I think is kind of a breath of fresh air. It looks really nice for an industrial building. I like the different uses of material, and it's much better than your standard tilt-up panel, big box warehouse building. So I like that. I'm not sure what on point 6 what the recommendation was for what more articulation, what that means. It's a little bit ambiguous, but I wouldn't be opposed to removing the point. I think it looks good from this view. I'm not sure, Liz, do you know what was intended as what more articulation meant?
Yeah, I mean, as you can see on kind of the south and north facades, you know, you have a kind of a break in materials with some of the material applications there, and basically the comment was just carry that through the building.
Gotcha.
So again, it could be very subjective, but that was kind of where the comment was stemming from.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Brass. I think, especially, this is the west side. I'm not sure.
Facing Revo.
Yeah, it's facing Revo Road, and to me, this looks like standard fare. I don't really know what we would want them to do. If they would want to add some more windows, that maybe if they don't think they need them, then I don't think we need to.
I think it was more
require
like the metal pattern or some more wood is what Liz was getting at, corrugated metal panels or like a piece of wood on the side. I mean, if I'm being picky now, I don't mind the look of the building. The ladder sticks up a little bit, but again, I'm not trying to raise a new issue, but I'm not opposed to it. If the rest of the commission is not opposed to it, I'm not opposed to removing 6.
I would agree as well, and this maybe is just a holdover from when the building was flipped the other way, facing Old Audubon, and I think the parking was arranged differently. Maybe it was more pertinent before with the previous plan.
That's a good point. It has downsized some, and probably has changed the look.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the different textures and materials there too is going to give a nice visual on it as well.
This is on the west side, so the view from Revo, isn't that, with the situation of the building now, won't that be the primary view for residents traveling past this building, since it's now tucked well off of Audubon?
Yeah, the view from Revo Road would be probably the most visible. I would say the west and the south are going to be the most visible from.
Can you show the south elevation, Liz, facing the residents?
Mm-hmm.
We do have a question related to that, and also how the pond will be improved and how will it affect the backyards of the I assume the homes to the south.
Keep in mind that coming up from Revo Road, though, that we're doing a fair amount of planning out there, and there's a berm on the south side coming up off Revo, so it's not like you see the full height of this facade when you drive down Revo.
It's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
So how tall is the berm that's going to be on the west side then?
Maybe if the applicant could go over one more time the pond improvements. We did receive another question about that, about how it will improve the pond and how will it impact the adjacent backyards.
It should have zero impact on the backyards. We said that between city comments and Liz, I may have parties wrong, but the watershed, we have done a lot of calculations. was 13 acres north of us and had to upsize the pond to accommodate all that. Nothing's changed other than we're putting a 13,000 square foot building on a 260-some thousand square foot lot.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you.
We have one
And
more.
Commissioner Dalkey, there was another Advantage Coding who's on the line, would like to also ask a few questions if you don't mind. I'll unmute them now.
Okay.
All right, Advantage Coding, you are unmuted.
Hello, Advantage Coding?
Well, maybe their question was answered. If they answer back on the chat, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, any more comments on number 6? If not, then I invite the applicant to move on with, I believe you said you had 1 or 2 other points you wanted to talk about?
Yes, sir. Point 7 and point 12, if we can, we'll go to 12 first. It's a provision that the eastern low maintenance turf area be irrigated. So this is everything outside of our yard space to Old Autobahn. This is designed to be just low maintenance turf, we can mow it as needed, but we have no intention of maintaining it as yard space. So for us to irrigate basically a field is really excessive. This whole space out there is taking up probably about 2 acres of irrigation.
Okay, you faded in and out a couple times, so I'm gonna paraphrase for what I think you're asking you or bringing up. You don't want to irrigate outside the fence, between the fence and Old Audubon?
Yes, sir.
On the east side, okay. And how much space is that gonna be?
It's got to be upwards of an acre.
That sound right?
Somewhere in there.
Okay. Are we requiring this?
Yes, we require the yards to be irrigated.
Okay. And that's part of our
Code.
normal code? Okay, that's part of our code. Very good.
We're not using it as a yard. We wouldn't even do any landscaping over there if it wasn't that we had to green to accommodate the larger pond and the swells coming off from the properties to the north.
Comments from the commissioners?
Kevin? Hey, Kevin, this is
Yes.
Rob, this is Brass.
Yep.
Per the code for the irrigation, when you define the yard, I mean, is that more of an immediate yard around a building that's usable as the grassy area that you would have maybe like picnic tables for employees or walkable, or is it going to be the whole entire thing? Because I'm sure there's some, I'm just curious as to how that relates to like other 100,000 foot buildings that sit on 16 acres. I mean, they're not clearly irrigating all that land, are they?
Right. Typically, if it's a building expansion area, no, but if it's like a front yard or something like that, yes, this is a little unusual. But also, I mean, low maintenance, typically the irrigation gets you a higher quality look, and low maintenance along the road, that leaves I think a fair amount to be determined by each individual of what low maintenance means. Some
So
people
the
might,
ambiguity of it,
yeah.
does the applicant have, I'd like to hear from the applicant is what they are considering low maintenance. What's your plan for that area?
When would you mow it? At what
And what
height?
would be the vegetation?
We would use, I believe it was specified to us, it would be some sort of MnDOT seed mixture that would go in that area. And we would mow it as needed. It's like I said, We have no intention of using it as a park or anything like that, so to expect that it be irrigated, you know, if you're gonna say that area's gotta be irrigated, then, you know, I've got 5.5 acres here. And if we come down to me irrigating 5.5 acres, this deal's not going anywhere. I mean, what we put into the landscaping and the facade of this building, and brought to the city of Chaska is, in my mind, one of the better looking buildings in the whole city of Chaska from an architectural standpoint, and definitely an improvement between the residential and an existing industrial. You know, so to me, having this grass back there that's mowed once or twice a month is a large improvement, considering for the last how many years it's just been a cornfield that part of the year is corn stalks and the other part of the year is tilled up soil. I wouldn't even be touching this back part of our property at this point in time. Like I said, if it wasn't for the grading that's needed to account for all the water coming north of us.
Kevin and Liz, can you comment on what the neighboring industrial buildings have for yards and irrigation, if we, at a minimum, try to be consistent?
Yeah, it's hard to say what they currently have on site right now, but I would say most of it is pavement or gravel out there, open storage yards. So I wouldn't be able to confirm from an irrigation standpoint what has what.
I'd like to make a comment. Because of where it is, I would say the low maintenance grass is perfectly fine. But you're going to be putting plants right around the fence. Trickle irrigation for the plantings to keep them looking nice and screening the lots would probably be much better than irrigating grass that you end up having to mow more often than not. I would suggest that to keep the plantings to look well with trickle or specific irrigation from them would be the wiser way to go.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You know,
Applicant, do you have any comment on that?
I think one point is, you know, our vision of this outlot, or this section of our lot, is no different than what the city maintains across Old Audubon from us, right? That's not irrigated over there between Audubon and the dam or the creek there, right? It's low maintenance grass, the city mows it every couple of weeks and looks great.
Do you have any comment on Commissioner Cross's suggestions about keeping the trickle irrigation for keeping your plants and shrubs in that area vital?
We have irrigation around the building and for our landscape products.
You know, again, as Commissioner Brass, I think I'd have to side with the applicant on this again. I feel it's fair, specifically being the nature of Old Audubon Road where it is tucked back behind the creek. You got buildings around it, a low maintenance grass for that, you know, portion of the lot doesn't seem unreasonable. Especially considering, you know, what you have around it. It would still, I think, be better visually than what most of the neighbors.
I concur with that. So long as
I would too.
plants have irrigation, I'm fine with the entire lot not being irrigated.
Do you want to go to number 7, or advantage coating is back? And we'd like to ask that
Okay,
question.
well, if Advantage Coating is back on, let's let them
then we'll touch back on his last point.
Yeah, then we'll go back to the last point. Have we put them through advantage coding?
Yep, they are unmuted.
Yep. Go ahead, advantage coding. I just don't think it's working out for advantage coding tonight.
Yeah, they did, here's their questions if they are able to chime in. One is, how is the road being widened? And then I guess there's a comment along with that, there has been no contact with us since last meeting about using Arbor Drive.
Between the two properties?
Is Arbor Drive a private, that's not a private road, is it?
Yes.
It is a private road, yes.
Good.
But is that where the driveway's extending?
Yeah. Which they have cross-access easements for.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, so there is cross-access easements on it?
Correct.
Right. And they would have to amend those to include structures as a part of that. So I don't know, Jeremy, can you provide an update as to the last communication we've had with the other businesses?
So we haven't had any communication with them since probably about this time last year, simply because we were wondering if we were going to continue forward with the site, and then until we got through this meeting to see if we had a viable project that was going to get approved. Didn't feel it was worth wasting anybody's time on drafting agreements and such. When we spoke to them last year about this time, it seemed like everybody was agreeable, knowing that we had to have the legal docs written and amended. But we have not proceeded with that at this point. As far as why, I don't believe that the harbor is being widened. It has an entrance point that's kind of existing in the site already, where we would reach off from this existing drive and move the new drive back into our property line.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that.
Is that right?
Anything else on that point?
Not in the chat. Advantage coding is still unmuted if they are able to speak.
All right, well, we're going to move on.
He had number 7 or?
Yeah, I think Jeremy was at number 7, I believe you.
Yes,
We got to talk about yet? Go
The
ahead.
last point was number 7, that was the storage yard would be paved with asphalt. And we discussed this last time, and, you know, from our standpoint, for multiple reasons, we would like to see if there's a way of getting this waived so that we can do a conbit, which is a recycled concrete surface in there, as opposed to asphalt. A couple of the main reasons are, one is the cost of the asphalt is extremely large for an area that big. But two, we're more concerned that because the soils, as we approach into the storage yard, and the reason that we flipped the building originally was because we get over this area and we have heat that goes down about 28 feet. So and then put my equipment on it, the asphalt's going to be damaged in a relatively short period of time, regardless, just because of the amount of poor soils in that area. I believe the city's concerned with doing something other than like an asphalt or concrete paving surfaces, more to do with dust control. Well, if we were to use something such as a conbit, it sets up like concrete. That's what it is. It's concrete, as well as, you know, we would be willing to enter an agreement where we put calcium chloride in it multiple times a year if need be, if it couldn't. But also keeping in mind that most of it would be controlled because we have an 8-foot fence, fairly large trees being planted around the fence that would also help control any dust if that was the main reasoning behind having to have this whole thing.
So when you say conduit, you're basically talking about crushed concrete, gravel?
Yes.
And that's generally less dusty than, I assume, than
Class 5.
gravel, or do we?
It's probably about the same.
It's less than say a class 5 that you'd use for road base.
They both have the potential to be dusty.
Okay.
And this is another, Kevin, this is another code issue, right, where we require outside storage yards to be paved?
Correct.
But with the use of calcium chloride and 8-foot fence and all the trees and shrubberies around here, dust should be a non-issue.
What, for the applicant, when you say your equipment, what are you storing on the lot?
Well, we have all the work trucks and trailers come in and out. You have the equipment, excavators, front end loaders, skid steers that are stowed on it, as well as, trucks coming in fully loaded with, blocks and rocks and in and out. So like I said, it'd be one thing if we didn't have 28 feet of junk over here, but if we go in and put in a hard surface is going to be gone in a relatively short period of time.
Susan Cross would like to make a comment again.
Go
I
ahead.
do know a little bit about working with poor soils, and when he's talking of 20 feet of peat is correct according to the soil report type things. No matter what you put on the top of it, something's going to move. So if it's asphalt, it will move. If it's the concrete, gravel, whatever, it will move. So having it so you could actually readjust it by having a more gravel-like material would probably be wiser. We can't make a building on top of lousy soils work the same way as other buildings and applications. My comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. Anyone else?
And just so that the commission knows, the building itself has been a challenge to put in. This whole building is going on rammed aggregate piers just to support it. So where the building is proposed to be located currently, we moved it over here because the peat's only down about, on average, about 13 feet as opposed to where we originally had it in our yard, which are 28 feet now, which we could not get the rammed piers to work. So the two options we had were soil correction, which was not a very easy undertaking because we would have had to remove 20,000 cubic yards of peat at the whole time is trying to dewater this, export that, and import 20,000 yards of sand in order to make the original plant work. So then we went to rammed piers that wouldn't work there because the soils were too loose, too deep. And then we went to a driven pile. But unfortunately, we're not a retail business, so my mortgage payments would have been astronomical by the time I spent about $1.5 to $2 million driving steel beams in the ground. So we're coming at this, we want to work with you guys, we look at it from a realistic standpoint and we just know what will happen back here. So for us, it's, I don't want to say it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is to spend the dollars for that parking lot, knowing that we'll support it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Commissioner Balke, there are two more questions. One came in from Advantage Coding again, and there was a follow-up to the Arbor Drive. Have there been any tests done on Arbor Drive to handle heavy trucks?
We have not done any tests on Arbor Drive. I do know that the areas that have asphalt coming in are going to be heavy duty, so thicker lift. But I have not personally, we have not done anything as far as what's existing on Arbor Drive.
Yeah, it seems like that is a good question, especially relative to just the previous discussion we were having about the ability of your yard to support heavy loads on asphalt pavement.
Kevin, would we have on file the specifications that private road was built to, the tonnage?
Probably not.
Okay. Going back to we can answer the Arbor Drive, going back to the applicant, again, on this point, I feel like I'm in the applicant's corner here tonight, but I'm not opposed to that as well with a crushed concrete. It sounds reasonable. I get the engineering. I looked at the borings. It's bad soils. Just from a practicality standpoint, make them pave something, and it's going to be crushed up in 18 months anyway. You might as well just burn money up in a fire pit. And so, if the applicant could provide an engineer's memo, the professional opinion, basically stating that, I would also be okay with omitting this point. But I don't want to set a precedent with the city. I don't know how that works.
Right. But also have something in there a little bit more concrete about dust control.
Correct. Sure, yeah, definitely have to understand the dust control, because you do have the residences nearby.
Right.
Yeah, I believe that either whether it's calcium chloride or whatever the solution is, that be included in the...
Absolutely. I hate to make someone spend 80 grand or whatever it's going to be, and you just know it's going to, break apart. I've seen so many truck courts in my career where they didn't lay down the proper thing, or they laid it on bad soils, and they're just ripped apart from the semi-trucks for loading. And it's the same kind of thing, if you don't have, if you don't have the base, it doesn't matter what you put on the top coat.
Oh, I agree with you. We have that issue in the industrial park in several spots where we'd be much better off with a gravel parking lot than...
Right, and I know we don't want, for the aesthetics of it, the city code, and, it sets a precedent, but, there are rare instances. If we could get a professional opinion that would confirm this, I would be more amenable to removing this point as well. And working with the applicant on some sort of crushed concrete with dust control.
And I would remind the applicant that if the dust control isn't adequate, that's going to come back to bite you, where you will have to figure out a way to mitigate it if it does come up.
Yes, sir.
So there was a question that just came in from Kelly Jo Robinson, so I'm going to unmute her if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Before we go on, can we just respond adequately to Applied Coatings question relative to the Arbor Drive? I think that is important. I agree with you, Rob. That the yard, you've got soft soils. It's going to be flexible. Asphalt's flexible, but it's only flexible to a point. And it may be a big ask to have it paved, but that indicates to me that there may be issues on that shared driveway. And so how is that reconcile with applied coding? Who ends up taking responsibility if there are problems with that driveway due to heavy loads coming in and out?
I think one of the things that we could, or you could add in terms of a condition relative to Arbor Drive is that they bring us back the agreement with the final approval, and so that we know both parties are then in agreement with the conclusion of that. Because maybe it's a different cost sharing, knowing that that road is going to get torn up a little bit more by the applicant, and maybe the cost sharing is a little bit differently that way. And so, but at least if we came back and they brought back the agreement between the two parties, we would know that we've addressed that adequately as we move into the final.
I agree, Kevin. I think it should be addressed. And Mr. Raleigh, thanks for bringing that up. Again, coming back to it, if Arbor Road is fine today and they start using heavy equipment on it, it's not, clearly there's an issue and it's caused by the extra equipment travel on it. And so there would need to be an agreement between the two parties to understand what the ramifications are of that and how it's satisfied.
Does the neighbors know currently what the road was built to, or otherwise we'll get in contact with them and work that out?
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need to work on that with applied coatings, and if there's anyone else on that street.
Yeah, just those two businesses would be there, and so, and then just get that rectified and get that agreement finalized and make sure everybody's okay with it before the or final submittal.
Yep.
And then we know that that's been resolved in some adequate fashion between the two parties, because this really is trying to understand that that agreement is beneficial to both parties.
Correct.
And maybe the road does get broken up or needs some different maintenance, and how that gets assigned out would be an important element of that agreement.
Yep.
All right.
Just for the question, I did misspeak. It's getting widened into our property.
You need to talk consistently at the mic.
Yeah, you're fading in and out badly.
I said, I misspoke, the road is going to be widened, but it's being widened into our property coming up Old Ottawa.
Okay, that's helpful. I still think, like we talked about, make sure that yourselves and applied coding, you guys have an agreement that you're both going to be satisfied with the use and maintenance of that driveway.
Yes, sir.
Kevin and Liz, is that an action requested item currently on this 21? I'm looking through this here, an agreement between those parties for the road?
It is not, so we would have to add it.
We need to add that, yep. Okay.
Yep, I have that here as number 22, I guess, so.
So so to sum up, in my kind of reviewing here, if you were to request a motion, I would be okay with omitting 6, and then 7 would be provide an engineer's memo to confirm what the applicant is talking about, and then omitting 12, and adding a 22, which is the agreement between the neighbor for the road.
Yep. Rob, that's the same thing I have.
Okay.
So
Is that a motion?
Yeah, do we have any more comment?
We do have 2 more public comments. So Kelly Jo, you can ask your question.
Hi, this is Bruce Nord. I'm in full agreement that paving that there all along would be quite difficult and it wouldn't last. I would just like to be given some assurances that there would be a schedule for dust control, and I realize that much of that depends upon what the weather's like, but I would like to see sodium chloride put on there at least a couple times a year. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And there was one other question?
Yep, there's another question from Amy Ann. Amy Ann, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. I'm kind of taking a step back here to the pond area. Now, if I'm understanding correctly, the wastewater from this construction site is going to be going into the pond, is that correct? And then if so, there is a lot of wildlife that is in the pond, ducks, geese, muskrats, frogs, turtles. Is that safe for the pets, the animals?
Wastewater or runoff?
Runoff, runoff.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help you out. There will be a requirement for an NPDES permit, and as part of their permit, they'll have a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which would have erosion control protection measures. So, and I understand city staff that's one of the items that during the course of construction that they will monitor. In addition, Minnesota Pollution Control, makes site visits on occasion to follow up on those permitting activities. So I think you're in good hands.
Perfect, thank you.
Nice.
All right. Anything else before we close the public hearing?
We did, but.
Or I'm sorry, I guess we already did, but we're learning. We're learning. This is a new way to do business, so. I guess, do we have any more comments from the applicant or questions for the applicant before we bring it back to council or to the commission?
Yeah, there's nothing from the public side.
Okay, very
Thank you,
good,
Kevin.
thank you.
Nothing from the applicants.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the commissioners. Any further comment on, besides what we, any comment on what we've decided to delete and add before we move on to a motion?
I might be the only dissenting opinion, but I'd like to keep number 6. To me, that the important facades from a visual standpoint are the south and west. That I think it's a good point to put the articulation on the west, so that it can be viewed from Revo Road. So, and if that comes even at the cost of some of the what may be on the north facade, just swap it around. But based upon the siting on the property, I think 6 should stay.
All right, anyone else?
Just one comment. I've worked with that crushed concrete quite a bit, and while it can be dusty the first year or maybe 2, after that it packs in pretty well, and you'll have very minimal dust at that point, unless you're adding new, top coat to it from time to time. But I think from a dust control standpoint, it shouldn't be a big issue, especially after a year or 2 of use.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so how would, for the rest of the commission, before we make a motion, how would we like to, have we made a decision on 6 then?
Well, I think that depends on who makes the motion. I would assume you would make the motion we would want a motion to delete 6, change 7, and then add a 22? Did we cover?
And then an engineer's memo at 12.
Or, no, it would be,
With 7.
right.
That would go with
Sorry,
number 7.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, yep, delete 12.
Oh, correct, I forgot about number 12. So I would be looking for a, for the motion as presented with the deletion of number 6, number 7 being changed to the concrete mix with dust control, deleting number 12, and then adding number 22, which is the private driveway agreement with Applied Coatings?
The property owner to the north.
Property owner to the north, okay.
Okay.
So, I would like a motion for that, please.
Well, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary site and building plan, preliminary plat for structures, PC 2011, subject to the current following 21 conditions, with deletion of 6, addition of an engineer's memo of 7 for crushed concrete with chloride treatments, and deletion of 12, and the addition of 22, a private road agreement between the property owner to the north.
Thank you, Commissioner Brass. Can I get a second?
Commissioner Seiler, will second.
I believe Commissioner Seiler beat the buzzer there, so you'll get the second. Any more conversation before we call the vote? All right, hearing none. Liz, please do a roll vote, please.
Commissioner Brass,
Yay.
Cross,
Yay.
Lacey,
Yay.
Olson,
Yay.
Riley,
I'll vote no, just based on item 6 for this.
Seiler,
Yay.
Bobby,
Yay.
Urbanski,
Yay.
and Chairperson Dalkey.
Yay.
I'm showing an 8-1 vote.
All right, very good. Thank you, applicant, for your time tonight on that subject, and thanks everyone for their questions and comments. Well, I'd like to move on to action item 7B. Recommend approval of the concept plan for Pioneer Vista, Lennar, PC number 2020-08. Liz, you are on.
All right. 1 second as I pull my screen up here. Oh. All right, can everyone see that? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, members of the Planning Commission again. We have a concept plan application for Pioneer Vista development proposed by Lennar. So to give you a look at where the site is located, I've included it in this aerial exhibit here. So the subject area that we're looking at tonight is highlighted in this orange triangle. This orange triangle is located just north of Clover Ridge Development, which I'm highlighting just south of the train tracks. There's the Twin Cities and Western Railroad that kind of dissects Clover Ridge development from this site. We have Pioneer Trail on the north side of the site, and then Clover Ridge Drive abuts the west side of the site. So again, we're looking at basically the area that's east of Clover Ridge Drive and bounded by Pioneer Trail to the north there. So just for a little bit of a background, when Clover Ridge was going through kind of their overall development and planning stages, the area to the north of it was also conceptually looked at and contemplated for its overall use out there. And really what that showed during that time was a plan for a multifamily type use, specifically on the east side of Clover Ridge Drive. But no formal approvals were actually taken during that time. It was just more of a contemplation. So tonight we are looking at the first step in the process, which is a concept plan approval, which would involve the construction of a 54-unit townhome development. In terms of how this land is guided, by our comprehensive plan. It's guided for medium density residential and open space. And basically, the medium density residential is oriented to the north side of the site, and then kind of that open space piece is basically where you see the existing wetland there. Maybe you didn't see that exhibit, but here it is now. So on the north side here, kind of where the vacant open land was basically sanctioned for that medium density category. And then there is an existing wetland on site, about 3.5 acres in size. The total site acreage for what's being shown here is approximately 17 acres. And then when you take out the wetland, you're dealing with about a 13-acre parcel of land to build upon. There has been due diligence done on this property, so a wetland delineation was done, which basically called out this wetland, and then a tree survey was also done, I believe, several years ago. And basically what that survey or tree survey provided was the presence of a lot of cedar trees out there that were very small in caliber, so 1 to 2 inch caliber trees were denoted out there, and a couple other box elders and elms throughout the site. So nothing that, from a staff's perspective, what we typically call out as significant or valuable species of trees that need to be looked at for preservation. There is an existing curb cut on the site today, and I believe it's about 400 feet south of the Pioneer Trail and Clover Ridge Drive intersection, so they would be utilizing this existing curb cut to access the site. So here is their concept plan. As you can see, their access is coming off of that existing curb cut. They are providing a private street through the development that would ultimately end in a cul-de-sac. So there's 54 row townhome units within this development, and that's broken up into 11 buildings on the overall site. So there's 3 buildings situated on the north side, and then 8 buildings situated on the south side of that private drive. And these range anywhere from 4 to 6 units in size. These are guided to be owner-occupied townhomes at this point. So each of these will basically be parceled out when they come back for plat. They are showing ponding on the south side of the site, or in the center of the site and south of the existing wetland there. Again, we don't have all the details on that at the concept level, but we'll certainly look into that during the preliminary stages on whether or not that is adequate for the proposal moving forward. They've also shown an amenity area kind of situated in the center of the site, nestled into the existing wetland. Again, we don't have details on that at the concept level, but we do like that it gets called out during this initial stage, and that it's programmed, or at least planned for as they move into their subsequent approvals. But at the preliminary stage, we will require to see more detail on that in terms of what's provided. Obviously, it should be catering to the demographic or the groups of people that they're marketing for, whether that's families or if this is an empty nester community. So the amenity center will more so be focused on the type of demographic that they're trying to market to. In addition to that, we have noted a couple recommendations as they move forward in the planning of the amenity area, where incorporating some type of internal trail along the existing wetland connected into Clover Ridge Drive would be of benefit, and definitely a scenic amenity for the residents out there, and could definitely add or be included in the total calculation that's required for multifamily developments. So again, we'll get more details of that at the preliminary stage, but at this time we're calling out a couple pieces to keep in mind as they move forward. And then lastly, because they abut the Twin Cities and Western Railroad and a major roadway here, we've noted that these edges, these separations between those two bigger pieces, that landscaping will be of utmost importance as they move forward. So in this concept plan, they're showing a level of some plantings there. Again, we don't require a landscape plan during this concept plan. So again, as they go into preliminary, we will advise and recommend that these areas are treated adequately for landscaping. They've also included several renderings and real-life pictures of the product that they're planning to develop out here. So here are a couple of renderings of the row townhome units that they're proposing. So these are front-loaded garages, two-level buildings, and we'll have the option for basements as well. And here's a couple pictures just to give you more of a real-life interpretation of what they're proposing out there. So they do provide a level of detail in their materials with shape siding, lap siding, and stone application, as well as bandboard wraps around the building. They also have kind of their own anti-monotony criteria where they do provide variation in the colors and the color schemes between each building so that you're not looking at 11 buildings with the same color. So they have noted that that's something that they apply in their developments. This type of product in particular doesn't trigger a certain building design and materials ordinance from our ordinance, but we still will have emphasis on how all of the sides are being treated that are exposed to public view through the site. So a couple things that I just wanted to touch on that they'll have to work on as they gear up for preliminary is, first of all, the amenity area and whether a pedestrian trail around the wetland area would be a great and unique amenity for the development for the residents to use. So that'll be something they need to work on, and then working on their landscape plan to provide appropriate buffer areas between the railroad tracks and the major roadways are just a few. But with that, we believe that they've provided a good concept plan at this point. At the initial stages, there's stuff to work on, but at this point, we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the concept plan for Pioneer Vista based on the conditions that are listed in the staff report for that. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Otherwise, Josh Metzer with Lennar is in the audience to help answer questions as well.
Yeah, Liz, Commissioner Seiler here. I have one question. If you go back to the concept plan sketch, what's being depicted in the upper right-hand corner where it looks like Pioneer Trail? The blue lines veer off Pioneer Trail and kind of go southeast.
I can answer that. That's the old Victoria Drive.
Yeah.
Sure.
Victoria Drive used to
So
come
yeah,
up.
there's no future roadway being planned
No.
there. That's still on the sketch. Okay.
That's
That was
from
an
the
old
past.
Hey, Kevin, along those lines, yeah, because that's a great question, because obviously Victoria Drive was a grade separation with a bridge that crossed the tracks.
Yes.
Is Lennar able to take that fill out in order to facilitate their grading plan? Because that I'm skeptical that that cul-de-sac fits without a retaining wall based upon that existing fill that's within the old right-of-way.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to get into that in more detail and as part of the preliminary at this concept level, that's a good note, but at this point, we just don't have enough information on that. So we'll have to see where they get when it gets to their preliminary application.
Okay.
All right. Any more comments?
Susan Cross, the best I can see that their homes at the very most are about 100 square feet different between one model and other models. And even though they say they're different colors and so forth, the houses look the same. The structure's the same, the two same peaks next to each other with a double. I would hope that they would have something a little bit to vary the face of their townhomes. That's all.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, this looks like a typical good start to a concept plan, and obviously there's points that need to be worked out, and oh, there you are again. And it seems like we should be able to move forward with this.
We have someone who has their hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, we do have a question from Jeremy
And Greg Butler.
and Greg Butler as well, and Jenny and Josh as well. So few questions.
Do you want to go to the applicant first?
Is that Josh?
Yes.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
All right, Josh, you are unmuted.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A little closer to the mic would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Better?
Yep.
Great. Well, good evening, Chairperson Dahlke and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for considering our application tonight, or our concept plan anyways. Not much more to add. Liz's report and presentation were very thorough. Obviously mentioned that we're excited to be here in Chaska, exploring the opportunity here. We are hopefully, we've got our civil engineering out for bid right now, and those bids are due back this week. So hopefully in the next week or two, we will have an engineer contracted, and we will be able to start getting into grading plans and stormwater treatment, things like that, and get some more detail so you can see how this plan will actually shake out. And ultimately kind of take a look at how we're going to be able to provide utilities, whether it's through private or public means. We're going to try to explore that. So look forward to getting more details for us and for you. And we appreciate your consideration tonight, and any feedback you can give, we appreciate. And if you have any further questions, we can try to answer those as well.
Hey, Josh, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the unit, where other places that might be, typical price point, typical type of buyer that you see moving in there. I'm just trying to anticipate questions that we might be receiving shortly.
Sure. So price point right now, and of course, these things are always subject to change, but right now we're hoping to target the low 300s. And of course, that can vary because these units themselves are unique in that they're a basement townhome. So you've got a main level, a second story, and then a basement level. The base price includes an unfinished basement. The buyers do have the option of finishing out the basement to add, obviously, a family room, bedroom, and bathroom. So price points can go up from there. Target market is, for our townhomes is usually, younger families, younger, single people of all ages, from, 20s all the way up to retirees, empty nesters. So it can vary quite a bit. I guess there was a question about the architecture varying that, because this is a townhome, as typical, it is one standard design from the outside. These will vary between, they're interchangeable between 4 units and 6 unit buildings, so you will have some variation in length of the building. And for examples of these exact basement townhomes, we do currently have them under construction in Maple Grove, Woodbury, Lakeville, and Rosemount. And I could certainly send Liz specific information on the names of the communities. We have websites for each community, and of course you're welcome to visit the sites themselves. Right now, due to the pandemic, our welcome home centers are only open by appointment only, and so if someone is looking to tour a unit, you would need to make an appointment ahead of time, but certainly free to drive through the communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, we had a question from Jeremy. Jeremy, I'm gonna unmute you.
Great, good evening, Commission. Thank you for your time. I do have a few questions tonight regarding this development. The first, I'll act on behalf of the Board of Directors for the Jonathan Association. I am a current serving board member and an executive director. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to refer the Commission to a letter dated March 13th of 2019, where the Board of Directors of the Jonathan formally requested that all developments in this area are included in the Jonathan Association to benefit the development community as well as the existing members of the Jonathan Association. Has that been brought to the attention of the developer?
Liz?
We have not shared that letter in particular, no, since we just got it today, but we'd be happy to share it with them so that they can review it and start that communication with you guys.
Great. Yeah, I think that's extremely important. Again, the letter was sent March 13th of 2019 and applicable to the Sagewood developments as well as other future considerations such as Pioneer Villas. So we're excited to see development and talking about the demographics that are being targeted with young families. We see the amenities that the Jonathan provides with our trail system as well as our tot lots. Really is something that these residents are very likely to use. It would also benefit our members then to have those covenants and restrictions, especially in a neighborhood like this. It's really a gateway neighborhood to the Clover Ridge area, and I think it's something that's very important that the Commission considers.
All right, and
Thank you.
thank you. Liz will share, or we will share that with the builder.
Great. Next, my next question is related to the anti-monotony code and multicolor code. I don't see in any of the depictions shown really how that comes through other than in multiple shades of gray. What I'm wondering is if the developer could share a little bit more. I think the Planning Commission did a great job working with multi-builders on the Brooks Ridge concept, providing some delineation in the homes and the color choices, and it really was a great amenity off of Pioneer. So I'm just wondering if the developer could share a little bit more of what we could expect in the development concept.
Sure. So as far as color packages, we have, in total, we probably have about 100 different color packages that we use, but we don't use all 100 in every product. So with townhomes, we usually have about 30 to choose from. And obviously here we would probably have roughly 11 color packages, and those range. And yeah, the pictures that I provided were all of our models from 3 different communities, and each of those happen to be some form of white or gray. But we do have, browns, tans. We've got a red color package, a couple of blue color packages, some muted yellow, muted green. So we have several color variations, and I could, share some pictures with Liz if she wanted to distribute those of the, some of our town communities and the color packages there. They're also, you can probably see some online as well, but I'm happy to share some pictures with Liz if she wanted to distribute those.
Great.
Thank you.
My next question is on landscaping, and it's more of a request to the commission and to Liz that as you're looking at the trail systems, now this comes from myself as a homeowner, so I live at 1368 Romeo Court, and my backyard overlooks this development area. What I'd like the commission to consider strongly is the landscaping plan extending beyond the area that you had pointed out, Liz, down towards the cul-de-sac, and truly running the length of the railroad in consideration to all of the residents that currently reside with backyards facing north on Romeo Court.
No, thank you for the comment, and we'll, as we move into the preliminary, we'll obviously be putting together a landscape plan, so we'll have to kind of work through the details with the developer on kind of where the focal areas are going to be on that.
Great. That's all the questions I have this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your input.
All right, and then we have a question from Greg Butler. So Greg, I am unmuting you now.
Hi, Greg Butler here. I live at 1355 Romeo Court. Thanks for the opportunity to provide public comments on the plan. This is the first time I've seen it, so a bit surprised with a couple of the elements. I have 4 things to share with the commission and possibly 1 comment at the end. Would you like me to go one by one or give you those 4 questions in one large group?
However works the best.
Yeah, let's do one
Okay.
one at a time.
One at a time it is. Were there any communication expectations to the surrounding communities, neighborhoods for tonight's meeting? The reason I bring that up is my neighbor 2 houses down received 2 communications and I received none.
Per state statute, we're required to notify properties within 350 feet of the subject site. So there is a cutoff point from that, but that's what we use to send out notifications.
Well, then I would add that if you use the railroad tracks, I live on the south side of Romeo Court. Jeremy lives on the north side of Romeo Court. Not much difference. That's comment number 1. Question number 2, is there been any environmental impact studies done on this particular project yet, or is it a little too early in the process for that?
Correct. We don't usually do an environmental impact study, and usually those are triggered by certain large-size developments. Per state statute, then they would have to go through an environmental impact report, which this would probably fall under or fall outside of.
So there would be no environmental impact study done for this particular site, is that what I heard?
Right, it wouldn't be triggered by the statute for the size.
Okay. Third point is, has there been any traffic studies done, or again, is it too early in the process for that to be considered?
Correct. At concept level, we're looking at purely conceptual plans. And then as we lead into preliminary, we have more of those technical documents prepared. Usually a traffic study has to be advised by the commissions to do, or by our engineer to do. So at this time, we're not sure if that's going to be prepared as a part of their preliminary submittal.
Thank you. The fourth point is based on previous apartments that were built into this area. A concern of parking in the area was expressed at that particular time, and I will express it here. Not only for the residents that live there, but for guests that visit the neighborhoods, that there's not a lot of excessive parking out on public streets in this area. And I would also echo Ms. Cross's comments that the elevations seem to come across as cookie cutter, for lack of better words, and I'd love to see quite a bit more creativity in the applicant's design. And then the last thing is a comment. Liz, in your first slide of your presentation tonight, you mentioned when Clover Ridge development was initially designed for multifamily uses. My question is this: at that time, I don't know when that report was prepared, but at that time, was Pioneer Trail Extension in the mix, and was the Clover Ridge Road connecting Pioneer Trail in existence? I guess my concern is we're squishing a lot of townhouses, 54, into an area that's a very small area. I just wonder if that space is better suited for other purposes, such as a green space or a park or something like that, more conducive to the local inhabitants.
All right, thank you for your comments.
All right, we have another comment or question from Lance. Lance, I'm going to unmute you here.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Lance Raji. I live at 1360 Romeo Court, so I'm just on the south side of the railroad from this development and neighbors with some of the guests that were publicly speaking tonight. I just, had a couple concerns to share. I know we're at the conceptual level, but I wanted to, again, reiterate, and suggest the full landscaping plan on the south side of the property from east to west, running alongside the railroad tracks. I think Jeremy had brought that up as well. And I'm a little bit surprised when I look at the neighborhood overall. This doesn't seem much of a mixed density development. Jeremy had brought up a Brooks Ridge development east on Pioneer Trail that had single detached houses as well as townhouses within the same development. I thought that was a nice model. I just as a neighbor, just like, preference is to see a little more mix in the density. Because these homes are, maybe the main floor is 600 square feet, where it's surrounded by houses that are, twice the times that. But just to throw a mix in. One of my concerns also is about parking. I like the city's suggestion to increase the parking stalls from 21 to I think 27. I'm just a little bit concerned about the private drive that's narrow with no sidewalks, limited stalls, small amenity area, and just thinking about the fit with the larger neighborhood. And my last comment is just from the perspective, again, of a neighbor living in this area for a couple of years, is when you look at the when you look at the area map, it's sort of a mecca for ponds. You can see there's ponds adjacent all the way around this parcel. On the north side, north of Pioneer Trail, on the northwest corner as well as northeast corner in the along Isabella Parkway, already south, southwest, west, southeast. There's also the Walden Pond. What this means is just there's a lot of basically it's an attractant for a lot of mosquitoes and black flies, ticks, things like that that can, cause an issue to the public from disease and annoyance. So just wanted to raise that concern. Understand, I see that they're adding a couple additional ponds around the wetland area. Just I'm concerned about the impact and maybe the cost share for the larval treatments, things like that for the mosquito control. Whether that's pellet droppings or spraying or whatever. Not sure how you guys usually approach those, but are my concerns. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for joining us.
All right, we also have a question from Jenny. Jenny, I'll unmute you here. All right, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you, committee, for letting me speak here tonight. I also live on Romeo Court 1358, right up against the railroad tracks. And currently, there are very large trees left from the farm previously or mostly the railroad company that block that railroad track. And I want to make sure that those trees stay. And I'm pretty sure they're on the railroad property, so I don't think the developer would be able to touch those, but they are very large trees and they are nice already for the landscaping and the protection and the quietness of the railroad tracks. So I really would like those to stay and voice that concern because they are very large trees. And especially in the summer, it's really nice to block the noise from the railroad tracks, and they're beautiful. My other concern would be, have we talked to Clover Ridge Elementary and the impact? I don't remember hearing what the demographic is going to be. I heard a price point, but I didn't hear the demographic as to what families they're going for. If there's a large amount of children here, has that been discussed with the district and the amount of children in that density, that large density of an area, the impact on Clover Ridge, already at capacity and already with a failed referendum, the impact of the schools in this community. The other one is entrances. I saw the one, will the only entrance be on Cloverfield Drive? Will there be an entrance or an exit on Pioneer Trail? So I know there's, there is another, the townhomes down by the roundabout farther down Pioneer Trail do have an exit onto Pioneer Trail. Is that an option, or is there just going to be that one entrance where the curb is already built? And those are all my concerns or questions, whatever you want to call them.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your...
Is that our last public comment?
There's one more, looks like, from Rick Waller. Rick, you are unmuted.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it. As I was looking at the agenda for this meeting today, I found online a document called the City of Chaska Land Use Plan. And I would like to express my opinion that this development is in violation of the principles that are stated in the Chaska Land Use Plan. And the plan states, let me just quote a couple of sentences, I won't take too long. The plan states that a permanent green belt shall be established around the edges of the city to the extent possible. And the primary purpose of this green belt is to help preserve and strengthen Chaska's sense of community, and to preserve and protect valuable open space and natural resources, including a rural lifestyle. The protection of a rural character, I'm still quoting from the land use plan, is an important land use strategy for implementing the green belt concept. The plan then goes on to say that land uses at key entrances to the community is a very important factor to promoting this rural character. And certainly the corner of Clover Ridge and Pioneer Trail is a key entrance by anyone's definition. There's no other way into the area for miles in either direction. Key entrances are those locations where an arterial road enters or exits the community. I have the opinion that the building of this development violates the City of Chaska plan in several respects. The area consists almost entirely of wetlands and steep slopes that will be difficult to build on. And the developer has even admitted in their proposal that extensive landscaping will be required because of the steep slope of the area. Also, they're proposing a private road to use public utilities. It seems to me that that presents a problem. Those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other public questions?
I do not see any at this time.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your input, and I'll bring this back to the Planning Commission.
This is Olson. I do have a question. Liz, this might be more for just how the anti-monotony rules go. Usually that's on the front-facing side of the house, but knowing that it truly is the rear-facing of all these townhomes that everybody's going to see as they come up Clover Ridge Drive, what can be done specifically for that besides the color? Because you're going to be talking about flats. Based on the floor plans, it looks like they're flat backs with maybe a deck on it. What can be required here to make sure that at least the monotony side of things is not coming into play here? Because that truly is what everybody's going to see. The front side is going to be covered with landscaping and with facing Pioneer Trail, but you truly have the back side that's facing the wetlands that everybody's going to see. That's nothing but 4 and 6 size 6 buildings that are just going to be this flat side. So what can we do with that?
Sure. So one of our conditions of approval carried through in this report does require 360-degree architecture, specifically for those buildings that have high exposure to public view. So what that means really is taking some of the elements that you see on the front side of the building and carrying those through on the rears and sides of these buildings. And ways that can be done, or at least provide for a little bit more articulation on these exposed facades, is seeing that wrap of bandboard around the middle section of the building, wrapping the different siding applications like the shake siding and the lap siding to the back, similar to what you see on the front. So we do provide that as a condition of approval in this report specifically, so that we can provide a little bit more articulation on those very exposed areas. Just to be clear, this type of product doesn't kick in the anti-monotony requirements. Just so people are clear, we're not, we don't have a requirement for them to create difference between each unit, but we can carry that articulation requirement through the entire building. on all the facades with our 360-degree architecture.
Okay. My only other comment is, I know that obviously we'll have a traffic study requirement, but knowing that this is the first of probably multiple multi-family developments going up in this area, how is that traffic study going to be taken into consideration, knowing that this is the first of many?
I think we'll have to have our city engineer weigh in on that in terms of how to best apply that. So they'll have to figure out scope and impact of the development and what overall context we're looking at in terms of impact.
Hey Liz, I wanted just to address a couple of questions that came up here from a couple different people. In regards to a curb cut on Pioneer, I'm assuming that's not going to happen with the county or the state.
Well, that's up to the developer on whether or not they want to pursue that, but Carver County would be the one jurisdicting what would happen at any type of access onto the roadway. From initial accounts, it appears that they would have to do a lot of improvements on the roadway to accommodate any type of access into the development.
Slope, the drop in elevation, yeah.
And the curvature too, so.
Yeah, right. And then also wanted to touch on, has our 2040 plan, has our comp plan been adopted yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So I just want to point out to the one gentleman brought up the question in regards to land use. It is out, I'm assuming will be adopted. It's been on public display, figure 4.2 from our Chaska 2040 planned land use map. This land is zoned medium residential, medium density residential. So it does fall within the current guidelines of what is proposed for the future land use of that parcel.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the area that Mr. Lawler was referencing to is our greenbelt area.
Yep.
And there are specific areas called out or shown on our land use map as that greenbelt area, in which is that policy that he was referencing to is what would be applied to that. To
right.
those areas.
Also, those maps show where the key entrances are located.
Right. Okay.
All right,
And
Rob?
this is not one of them.
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to address those two questions. I mean, I know there were some other things about mosquitoes and different, the ponding. I think some of that, all that's going to come up at the next level.
Correct.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dahlke, can I just address a few questions, run through?
Sure.
I'm a huge advocate of informed consent, and let's start right now at the concept phase. So we'll try to get your questions, addressed. You're not necessarily going to like the answers, but at least we start, informing you of why this direction is going to evolve the way it's going to go. So I did take notes. Some of the things, some of my peers already addressed, but just kind of run through these things. With regard to the mosquito control, my understanding is that it's part of our tax base that we contribute to the mosquito control district, and then that'll be part of their maintenance, of the ponds. Kevin, I see you kind of shaking your head. Is my understanding correct?
That is correct. You pay taxes in the metropolitan area. Every property owner, and a portion of that goes to the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District, the MMCD, which then is responsible for dealing with mosquitoes in the metropolitan area and aerial spraying and all of that. And so that's a piece that is you do, as a property owner, pay for in the metropolitan area.
And I'm going in no particular order here, so this is going to feel a little choppy. With regard to the comments about parking. You've allocated, the developer's looking at allocating 27 visitor parking spaces. Is there any guidance or ordinance that drives that number of 27 as compared to 24 or 30, or how do we get to that number?
Yeah, that value is called out in our parking code. For townhome units, you have to provide one visitor parking space per 2 dwelling units. So if you take 54 townhome units and divide it by 2, you come to 27 parking stalls. And again, we've utilized this in other townhome developments, and it has worked quite well to accommodate for visitor parking for these developments.
Also, I think one of the things is that if you look at this on a per unit basis, typically it's about 2.5 parking spaces per unit. Typically, 1 is in the garage, 1 is in the driveway, and 1.5 is common. I believe that if you look at these units, they're 4.5 per unit, 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway, and then a half. So they're almost doubling our parking requirement.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
With regard to the screening, I thought that Jenny Killian brought up a great point, is that the existing trees along the railroad tracks already provide pretty significant screening for the property, for the adjacent properties along Romeo Drive. Maybe a question to Josh Menzer, with the developer. You certainly recognize that. Is my assumption correct that there's no intention of disturbing the trees that parallel the railroad tracks?
You are unmuted, Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, so of course, we want to try to preserve as many of those trees as we can along the railroad. Again, without a grading plan in front of us, I can't say 100% how many will be preserved, but as many as possible. And also, I guess to a previous comment of Commissioner Olson regarding the backs of the townhomes and lack of landscaping. This, the landscaping shown here was more to show buffer landscaping close to the roadways and along the private street. We would likely provide more trees along the rear of the townhomes. And you can't see it here on the concept plan, but I took a look at the tree survey, and there's roughly 50 trees spread out throughout the wetland area that won't be removed, that will remain in place. And when it comes to landscape buffering, obviously we're bordered by a Pioneer Trail, a heavy traffic roadway, a railroad to the south, and Clover Ridge, which will be a fair amount of traffic there as well. So, of course, we want to accommodate our neighbors and buffer our development from them. But more importantly, for us, we want to create a nice buffer for our residents from adjacent land uses and adjacent roadways, railroads like that. So it's as important, if not more important to us, to also provide those landscape buffers.
Yeah, thanks for stating that. I agree. I think it's a win-win. Thank you, Josh. With regard to the density of student population within the Clover Ridge elementary school, this does certainly come up with regard to other activities within the Clover Ridge area. I would say it is a recognized concern. I don't know that as a planning commission that is our mandate. That's something that certainly the school district, through their planning and school boundary process that occurs on a routine basis, I would say at this point, that they evaluate that as we continue to grow. So Kevin, do you think I've adequately addressed that?
Yes, we meet with them quite regularly and brief them not only on long range but also short range plans, and then also as projects come in they become involved so that they understand and can look at the unit mix and understand what's coming at them. So they've seen this from a long-range perspective and a mid-range, and now they'd be seeing it up close in terms of when it got, kind of in the development pipeline. They've been aware of this property being guided for medium-density residential since about 2000, so they've had significant run-up space to adequately plan for how they're going to deal with kids from this area when it is developed.
Thank you. And then my last item, and then I'll yield the floor, Commissioner Felke, is just with regard to Jonathan. I am a supporter of the Jonathan Association, and I do support the philosophy that adjacent development should be included in the association. I think that there's tremendous value to your future customers, Josh, and they certainly, with the proximity, are going to be using the amenities and trails and playgrounds. So just go on the record stating that opinion. So with that, I'll yield. Thank you, Commissioner Felke.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, I think we pretty thoroughly covered that. I guess I do have a question also on the Jonathan Association. I agree with Commissioner Riley on that. Is it up to Jonathan Association and the builder to decide whether they want their development going into the association, or do we have any rules on that?
There's probably two different components that need to be addressed in relationship to that. One is properties that historically have fall under the covenants of Jonathan. This is not one of those properties. So if it was, then it's pretty simple that they have to join, and then it's a relationship issue from there. The other ones are properties that are not inside of that, and they would like to have a relationship, and we would certainly facilitate the discussion between the two, and then it's really a value proposition on both sides, because obviously they do provide amenities, and maybe that doesn't require them to do certain things on their site that has costs and expenses. But I think that's a discussion that really needs to take place between the two of them, between two property owners, of what they can provide and versus what they can save, and make a decision from both perspectives, a business decision about where they go. From a city perspective, we're best leaving those two property or entities to talk to one another and facilitate that discussion by making the introductions, but really allowing them to have a discussion and come to a conclusion, a business conclusion that they both feel comfortable with. And so my guidance would be, we appreciate the comments from Jonathan. We value them within our community, and we will facilitate a discussion between the two, but it really is a discussion between the two of them.
Yeah, we can maybe just supply them a copy of that letter and or contact info.
Yeah, and make sure that they know how to get a hold of Jeremy and the board, and sit down and they can have a discussion about what might make sense and what might not make sense. They have to talk amongst themselves. We can't really negotiate that, and it's not really our role to negotiate that between associations, especially in light of that this isn't a covenanted property within Jonathan. So with that, we'll make the introductions, and then from there, each side needs to move forward and have that piece. So.
All right. Thank you, Calvin.
Yep.
Okay.
Jeremy does have his hand raised if you would like to comment.
I'm sorry, who does?
Jeremy from the Jonathan Association.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, I appreciate the comments and within the letter and the scope. Obviously, we absolutely as a board are interested in moving forward in this discussion, as well as providing, for all of these developments as they're coming on board, I know that the covenants and declarations aren't necessarily deeded, but most certainly in the Jonathan's plan, it's been very clear that we definitely had an intent from the beginning of what the association was to be. Granted, over time that has changed, but since then, in 2019, we were very clear on what we saw the Jonathan Association growing to be and what those borders were. And we look forward to working with the Planning Commission in the future to continue to engage these developers and providing them with that intent that the board has to work with them and provide them the amenities, and including those shared costs, things like as you're looking at the development of the amenity areas, we have our attorneys, which is Helmuth and Johnson, to engage with them on what we can do for development of the tot lots, as well as the trail systems and other landscaping opportunities that the Jonathan Association can provide by developments like this becoming part of our membership. So thank you.
That's a great sales pitch, and we'll make the connection between you and Josh.
All right. Thank you. Okay. If there isn't any more comment, I would entertain a motion to move this concept plan along.
Commissioner Dalkey, I'll offer a motion to recommend for approval of the concept plan for the Pioneer Vista Lennar PC 2020-08.
This is Olson, I'll second.
All right. And I assume that would include the 18 points on...
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing or seeing none. Liz, would you please do a roll?
Yes. Commissioner Brass?
Yay.
Cross?
Yay.
Lacey?
Yay.
Olson?
Yay.
Riley?
Yay.
Seiler?
Yay.
Bovee?
Yay.
Urbanski?
Yay.
And Chairperson Dalkey.
Yay.
I show 9-0.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your input and your questions and your help. I can't read that.
Josh says thank you.
Then thank
Okay.
you.
All right, and thank you, Josh. Okay, let's move on to Section 8 of the agenda. We'll just receive in other meeting minutes as we're required to do. 8A1 will receive in the minutes of the April 20th, 2020 City Council meeting, the April 20th, 2020 EDA meeting, and the minutes of the March 9th Park Board meeting. Those have been read into the record. So last, any comments, any roundtable?
Liz, why don't you call them out one by one?
Yep, good idea.
Sure thing. Commissioner Brass?
I do not.
All right. Commissioner Cross?
Nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Lacey?
No.
Olson?
Nope, I'm good.
Riley?
I'm good, thank you.
Seiler?
Yeah, the construction work on County Road 44 has been moving along pretty well here just outside my neighborhood. With the stay at home, all of us trapped in our homes looking out the window watching the big bulldozers move with our kids in school from home has been quite the month and a half, 2 months so far. So things are moving even though we're at home, but I think the stay at home order is going to expire now as of what Governor Walz said earlier today.
Except for barbers.
Yeah. Kevin and I are starting a rock band.
Either that or a mullet hockey team, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Commissioner Seiler, is that it from you?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bovee?
You know, I just wanted to commend staff and especially Kevin Wright, technology. I'm really pleased with how well this went tonight. And I feel like the public certainly had ample opportunity to provide comment, and it went much smoother than I anticipated. So well done.
I agree.
Will this be, is this the warm-up test for Monday's city council meeting?
Yep. This is what it's gonna be like.
Okay.
And Urbanski.
Yep, Urbanski.
Nothing tonight.
Then Dalkey.
All I want to add too is I want to thank Kevin and Liz for helping us get through these odd circumstances for meeting. I think it went, as Misty said, this is about as smooth as we could have hoped for, considering we had a fair amount of public input, and so I'm happy with the way it went. And as Commissioner Seiler said too, being stuck at home, I'm in, all day, every day in Chaska, and I appreciate our parks and trails, and I live in Jonathan and part of the Jonathan Association too, so I can appreciate what the amenities that we have, and Chaska's done very well in their planning. So, and it really shows when you're not allowed to leave town. So, that's all I have.
I think we should also thank the other Kevin for some great engineering, moderating this meeting. Thank you.
Kevin Wright does a great job for us.
Right.
Yes.
That is true. Thank you, Carl. Okay, Susan, did we already ask you? Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
All right.
And I'll second.
Okay, do we need to have a vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Liz.
Brass.
Yay.
Cross.
Yay.
Lacey.
Yay.
Olson.
Yay.
Riley.
Yay, thank you.
Seiler.
Yay.
Bovee.
Yay.
Urbanski.
Yay.
And Chairperson Dalkey.
Yay.
I'm showing 9-0.
Thank you. Yeah, yay. We are adjourned. Everybody stay safe. Have, I guess, I'm not sure what the governor all had to say tonight. That's right when I was walking in, so do what you're supposed to do.
And stay safe and healthy.
All right.
Be well, everyone.
Right.
Good luck,
See ya.
everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.